Hey guys, Carlos Rossi here. I'm here in Alaska, having a great time in this glacier. But I did record a nice video last week at the track with Kayla came over, Kayla Yaakov. She came to our track day and she did a track walk. I want to make sure I recorded that. So it's a lot of great information. And I'm just finished up the video this week, editing everything to post it up. So this is the intro for the video. I think there's a lot of great content that she spoke about. She went turn by turn, explaining what exactly she's doing. She's riding a Ducati V2, but it applies to almost any bike. It's obviously a little different from bike to bike, but I think that it's everybody from any bike can take a lot of advice and things that she said that she's doing the bike. So enjoy the video, and please make sure you comment down here. Make sure you like the video so more people can watch it too, and it will appear to more people. All right guys, I'll keep enjoying this glacier over here, and I'll catch you guys when I come back.
So I'm sure when you guys come down here, the track doesn't seem this wide. You walk it and you have so much room, right? And you have to really utilize every inch of this racetrack because it does get tight. And you'll see that when we come to turn 5, even the last section, it's very tight. But for sure, setting up for this first corner is super important. The best thing to think about when you're going over a track that has a surface that's a little bit wavy or bumpy, you want to get all your braking done straight up and down, right? You don't want to be braking and you're hard braking, I should say, right? You don't want to be trailing in with hard brakes, especially when it's bumpy like this. So making sure that you're clicking your downshifts, getting your hard braking done when you're fully straight up and down into this first corner, and setting it up so that you have a wide exit. Get on the gas early,
Do you trail in turn 1 or not?
You trail. Every corner, pretty much everywhere, you need to trail the brakes, right? Because a thing to remember, right? When you're not on the gas, you're on the brakes. When you're not on the brakes, you're on the gas. No time. There should be no time in between both of those. So as you're getting onto the brake lever, you're slowly releasing as you're adding lean angle. And once you have your direction in the corner is when you start applying throttle. And that's 5%, 10% throttle initial, and then you start feeding it in as you have your direction. So when we come in here, right, what we're trying to do, we're not trying to just immediately close in to where this hash line ends, right? That's way too early of an apex. What these guys have done, which is really helpful, I don't know if it was for this event or for maybe the cars, but that orange cone in the middle of the corner, that's your apex. That's when you want to complete your rotation of the bike, right? So when I'm coming into this corner right now, you can even see a little bit of that lighter line on the racetrack from the dark pavement to the lighter pavement, right? I'm not exactly that line, but I want to be open. I want to open this corner up so that I can drive up the hill, right? We have elevation coming up the hill, so we already know the bike's going to slow down more than we want it to. So we have to get on the gas early through here, carry our momentum up the hill. In order to do that, we have to open up this first corner like I was talking about. And unfortunately, someone crashed here this morning, but that was actually a good reference for me to know if I was turning in too early or not, right? So I knew if I was already to the inside of this, coming into the first corner, I turned in way too early. I'm to the outside of this first line as I'm entering the first corner, and that helps me know, okay, I set up well enough. Obviously, that's not going to be here for maybe other events, but it's a good idea for if you guys want to help open yourself up. So now we've got all of our initial hard braking done. We're starting to trail off the lever. And this is where I was talking about, if you guys were here when I was talking about it earlier, the track being a little bumpy, where the surface changes, right? We have a small dip here, and then where this pavement meets, there's another one, right? So when you come over these, you're modulating with your brake pressure, right? You don't want to be fully on the brakes, trailing still by the time you get to this point. You want to be letting off the lever a little bit more as you come over here so the chassis isn't as tight. So by the time I get to this cone, I'm about fully let off the brake lever and cracking open the throttle. And my vision is up. I'm looking up through the corner. I've already found my exit point on the curbing, right? Coming out of here, and what I want to do honestly is I want to have the bike pointed. I want to, basically as a professional racer, I want to be spinning the tire out of here, getting the bike good direction, so I can almost make this one big corner from turn 1 to turn 2. And New Jersey did a great job here, right? Because they added more pavement, more curbing to the outside. So don't be afraid to run over it. It's perfectly fine. It's just as much grip as on the racetrack. So when I come out of here, I'm spinning the tire. I have my direction, right? I know if I keep opening the throttle, applying throttle, I'll be all right. And I'm starting to just get onto the curb. And you can see here, once you get to a certain point, it starts dropping off, right? And you still have some lean angle when you're on accelerating here. So you don't want to be on this. You want to be more so on this side of the curbing. But you're still opening this track, the corner up, right? If I was here, the track looks way more narrow than if I went out another 2 feet. I have so much more room. Here's another one of those corners, right? You don't want to turn in too early because I'm sure all of you know the downside of this hill comes pretty fast, right? So you want to open this up as much as possible so that you can stand the bike up early as you get to the other side of this hill. Same thing, right? Where this orange cone is, you want to have your direction almost already. Coming in here, just applying a little bit of brakes to get the front to load as I'm turning into the corner. And I'm already thinking about my exit, right? I know my exit isn't directly on this backside. I know it keeps turning. So I come in here, I sacrifice a little bit of my entry speed to get my direction and to point out to the exit of the corner. So at this point, right, I'm looking for my exit. And we can even start to see this curb continue to bank around. I'm feeding the throttle at this point. I have a decent reference to know the curbing's gonna stop turning when I start to see this building, right? So I know at this point, I can really feed the throttle and not have to worry about running out of track too soon. Same thing I said as the first curb, right? The curbing starts to fall off and have these rivets, which here isn't as big of a deal because you're not as much on the side of the tire, but it still upsets the chassis, right? So when I get out onto this curb, I try to stay, you know, when it's needed and necessary, right on the seam between, you know, this flatter curbing to the more, I guess, aggressive curb. Again, this is more vision, right? We don't want to turn into this turn too early because we know we have 2 chicanes in a row, right? So we have to set up these 2 corners for that last part because that's the most important part, right? I'm sure there's someone at this racetrack that's faster than me from in between these 2 A and B of this 3rd corner. But by the time we get from B to C, I'm all the way on the gas and gapping them. This first part is a little bumpy, so it's the same thing. I kind of slow down a little bit more, hug this curb as tight as I can. I am on the white lines from, you know, from this to the next corner, okay? And I'm getting on the throttle, applying some maintenance, feeding it a little bit more in between to help me turn the bike. Because when you apply throttle, what does the bike do? It stands up, right? So it's helping you do that initial first part of your transition in the corners, in between the corners, right? So I'm feeding it more throttle in between and then still staying on maintenance all the way through the section. There's no point here aside from this initial 3A part that I'm fully off the throttle. Again, this is the same thing as turn 1. When I'm on the brakes trailing through here, I'm modulating my brake pressure so I'm not fully on the brakes when I'm over this bumpy section. At this point of the corner, I'm on the white line. I'm using as much track as possible. I'm not on the curbing because the transition from the curbing to the actual asphalt is not very great here. but I'm feeding it throttle, right? And you can see how open this is for me now. If I was, if I rushed this corner and I came in, I probably would be right here. You see how much more work I'd have to do to get the bike to flip than I would if I sacrificed just a little bit of entry. And now this is so much more open. I can carry the throttle more through this transition. So getting through the throttle here, applying a little bit more to help me turn the bike and flip the bike, rotate it. And same thing here, I'm holding on to this inner curbing, again, right on the white line. If you watch any of the Moto America races, you'll think they're just literally in the grass because their whole body is over the side of the bike. So again, vision, right? You see right here, I have to get around that curb and get to the back side of that yellow or that orange cone, right? So in order to do that, we have to open this up just a little bit more. When I come out of this corner, I'm staying on the throttle, applying more and more, but my direction doesn't fully change until I'm about right in between this here now and this next corner. So I'm not keeping it all the way over and using too much track, but I'm staying about in the middle, right? Applying the throttle heavy. And by the time I'm probably here, I'm starting to make that final transition to this backside of the corner. And again, my goal is to be fully turned and pointed, having my direction by the time I get to these cones. I want to be fully pointed to the corner, applying as much throttle as possible. So this is all vision too, right? When we're in that second part of the corner, we can't see the exit. So knowing and finding references like for here this weekend, these cones is super important so that we know, okay, that's where the track eventually ends up. Coming through here, right? I have my direction already. And I know, so like when I was out this morning in the advanced session, I was just completely so much tighter than half of the other people, right? Because at this point I have my direction, I've squared off the backside of this corner, and I'm already fully on the gas. While I have guys that are maybe 3 feet wider than me, still waiting to get to full throttle, and I'm already on the gas. And you can see it, right? See how much different these inner lines are than the ones that are out here. These are straighter and can almost straight line it, while these have to keep turning. So that's what I'm doing by opening up these corners, is making the track straighter for my bike, so I can be on the gas, fully on the gas as much as possible. On this patch, I'm probably here.
Somewhere here?
Like a foot off the inside of the track, right? But I'm applying throttle, so as I get farther out, right, by the time I get to the end of this patch, I'm probably this far off the track, right? So again, it's the same thing. As you apply throttle, the bike's gonna straighten out. And this is still a turn, so you're still gonna have a little bit of angle, but it's not gonna be, it's probably, I don't know, maybe 7 degrees of lean angle, as opposed to still being out here and having 12 degrees of lean angle, or 13, like 15 degrees of lean angle. The last thing you wanna do when you come out of this corner on a big bike is run out of racetrack too soon, right? On a little bike, you kind of want to be out here. You want to carry your momentum all the way through here. I think even on the Junior Cup bikes, we were full throttle through that last part of the section there. But on the bigger bikes, you want to be getting to this curb later, right? Because you open this up and you want it to be straight, I'm not getting to the curb until I'm here. And I'm not even getting onto it. I'm just running next to it. Maybe just on the edge of it, right on the seam. But I didn't need to use all of this racetrack so early because I waited to get, to open my corner up sooner and get on the throttle sooner. It was straighter. I didn't have to make this very large swooping line that required me to be on there. Is anyone uncomfortable wheeling over this hill? Yeah? A little bit? So, you know how in motocross you scrub a jump to get lower, right? So when I come up this hill, right, I come in just a little bit, and by the time I get to the top, I'm turning back to the outside of the track again. Yeah, so like I basically tighten myself up. Yeah, and that helps. No, I just, if anything, if I'm really getting up, I just like feather it just a little bit. But I'm never at the point where I'm fully off the throttle when I come over this hill. It's the same thing, right? You want to be fully on the throttle as much as possible. And I feel like for me, it's always been like I never wanted to use the rear brake because it slows down my momentum too much, you know? And just roll, and it also like, I don't know, for me it upsets the chassis, but other people I know it's not the same. So when I come back, the bike's fully loaded again, fully on the ground at this point. I'm still on full throttle until I get to this curbing. And when I get to this curbing, I'm using just a little bit of brakes, right, to get the bike to pitch in. But I'm not fully stopping. This is not, for me, this is not like a stop and go corner. This is an open roll speed kind of corner, right? Corner speed is what you need through here, because no matter what, when you get into this next one, we're gonna talk about it just a little bit, but when you get into this next corner, it doesn't matter where you are on the track. No matter what, when you get to the middle of the corner, you're all going the same speed, right? You don't need to open this up insanely for turn 5, right? So when I come into turn 4, all I'm worried about is my entry roll speed and my exit speed powering into turn 5. I don't care where I'm at really on the track, because by the time I get there, we're all going the same speed. See. Yeah, I think I do. Yeah. I think just one downshift. Yeah, this is probably third gear. Right, so when I get to this part of the track, what I want to do is I want to have basically slowed down enough to where I can be back on the gas here, but not too much to where I lost my roll speed, right? I want to be on the gas before I get to this curbing and drive out, right? So we're, again, same kind of thing, right? Being as close as possible to the inside, powering on the throttle. And for me, even if you watch any of the Moto America races, you'll see even the super bikes or the larger displacement bikes running out to, they're accelerating hard. They're running out to maybe 3/4 track, right? They're right about here. And that's what I'm doing today even, right? I'm getting on the gas so hard, it's pushing me out here. But what I'm not doing is slowing down too much and carrying too little roll speed to where I can go all the way to the edge of the track again, because that's not necessary for this type of corner that we're about to go into. So when I drive through here, now I'm making this one big corner. I'm not coming through that corner, sitting the bike up, turning it, and then turning again, right? I'm still on the side of the tire, hanging off the side of the bike, and then getting to my brakes. And at that point, when I get to the brakes, right, my bike is pointed in this direction, which is ultimately opening the corner up for me, right? So when I come into this corner, the widest I will be is maybe here, in the middle of the track. All this excess room here, right, on the racetrack is unneeded and unnecessary for this type of corner. Yeah, so when I come, let's just say I'm in 4th gear coming over the hill, right? I downshift once to 3rd when I come into turn 4, and then I downshift one more time here, right? So I'm powering through, getting to the brakes, clicking a downshift, and throwing the bike in. So again, right, if I were to come in here, it's not really 90 degrees, right? You look at this corner, it's a big, almost half circle. So if I entered tighter, right, like I was talking about, I'm here on the racetrack. But if I was out here, I still have to get the bike to turn around this big, like, circular corner. So if I wanted to really open it up, like every other corner we talked about, I would have to be out here. And at that point, I would have lost all my entry, probably would have had a guy come under me, out-braking me, right? So entering a little tighter here, you can really get away with, because this is the type of corner that it is, So that's why I enter the way I do through here. And that's how most of the professional racers will come through this corner. By this point, again, I'm just trailing off the brakes and immediately getting to maintenance throttle, 5%, you know, until I have my direction, which is what we were talking about earlier, right? As soon as I have my direction, I'm really feeding the throttle, opening it up. And at this point, I'm about full throttle with the bike completely stood up, sliding it to the exit here. When I'm here, I'm seeing, right, like even if I was a couple of feet back, I'm seeing my exit and I'm seeing the rumble strips, right? So my vision is actually to the end of those rumble strips because I already know in my peripheral I'm gonna make it to that point. What I want to know is how much room I have until I need to be off the rumble strips. By the time I'm in the corner, trailing, like about to fully trail off the brakes, my head is already looking at the exit. You always want to be a step ahead. It's like chess, right? You want to be, okay, you're about to enter the corner, I'm looking at the exit. You already have in your peripheral the entry of the corner. All right, now I'm reaching the exit, I'm looking to the entry of the next corner. So this is the same thing as every other curb here, but this one, again, you're straight up and down more than you are on the other parts of the track. So you can use this beginning part of this curb and it's not gonna hurt anything. Your bike should be fully straight up and down at this point, so your chassis shouldn't get upset over these rumble strips. The part that does get a little bit upset is when you have this small dip at the end. But again, you should be straight up and down, not with a ton of input, and it shouldn't get super upset. So this is where we're gonna cut in, but just to know when we get into this corner, right? Again, it's blind. So references. You need references everywhere, but since there's this new pavement, right, for me, when I'd come into this corner, I'd see a patch, I'd know I'd turn right after the patch, blah, 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 blah. We don't have that anymore. So we have to look at outside references. And I know, you know, for here today, that orange cone is the edge of the track, right? So I know I want to be open by the time I get to the edge of the track, right? Or, you know, entering the next corner when we get into. So by the time I'm off this curb, right, I'm already making my way over to the braking zone of the next one. And I want to make it fast enough to where I can be straight up and down in my braking, but not too fast to where I'm, you know, cutting too much time by doing that, right? Because, you know, when you weave on the racetrack, you're making more distance for yourself. So you don't want to make it super abrupt, but you don't want to make it too slow to where you're having to turn and tip in on the brakes at the same time.
What are you getting on the brakes for turn 6?
For me here, it's more of a feel thing, but generally it's around the 2, 1.5-ish here. Are there any like significant questions about anything we've done so far or this last half of the racetrack?
Turn 9. Turn 9 is the hardest turn.
Turn 6?
Yeah.
Because we have a little time, so if you want to just ask real quick, yeah.
Yeah, just ask where do you look for 6?
This is turn 6 right here?
Right? The apex, you can't see the apex.
Yeah, this is turn 6 right here,
Yeah.
right? So when I come through that corner, right, I know it's similar to this one right here, turn 4, right? Because you're carrying a lot of roll speed. But what I'm looking for once I go into the corner, flip in, right? We know it's a little longer, like you're saying. It's a long corner, so the apex is a little blind.
Yeah.
It's hard to see. So I know I have to wait just a split second before I start turning in, making it open to where I square off my exit. Actually, it's a little bit more similar to that turn 2, right?
Yeah.
If turn 2 was flat, that would be pretty similar to how it is,
Yeah.
right? Because it keeps turning.
Yeah.
So I know I need to focus on my exit there. So I need to turn in a little bit later, and when I get to the apex, I'm looking at my exit, looking at those rumble strips,
Yes.
making sure, okay, I know my direction and my closing speed to that. Yeah.
For this left-hand semicircle,
Yeah.
do you kind of just hug the inside and just kind of throwaway turn it, or do you hit the inside, push the bike outside, and then scrub off the speed coming back into it for the last part of the apex?
So there's a lot of different lines, and it also depends on your brand of bike. So the R6, right? You can basically go into there, right? I come out of, what is that? You have 6, 7, 8, 9 technically, or Is this long corner, is that 9 or 10? I guess we call that 10, right?
7 and 8 are like one wall. 7, 8, 9.
The big bowl is 10. So you're talking about turn 9 or turn 10? Okay. Right? So when I come out of turn 9, yeah, when I come out of turn 9, right, I'm sacrificing a little bit of my mid corner so I can get a hard exit, be fully on the throttle when I make that transition to the left-hand side, right? But when I get there, I'm just getting on the brakes enough to where I'm about maybe 1.5 feet off the inside, but I square it off, right? Square that first part off so I can carry maintenance throttle all the way through until again, my vision is up, looking at my exit and fully getting on. Not fully. When I get to the middle of the corner, I'm about 1 foot off the inside. So through here, right, you're coming out of here, if you're feeling like this is such a hard transition to make, these curbs are so much better than they were. I'm every single lap using this curb when I come into this last corner. And again, right, if I was just off the curb, this is so much tighter than it is if I'm just a little bit on the curb and I have my direction a little bit more coming into this last corner, right? So make sure you utilize all this racetrack here. This is at least, let's just say we use this much. That's another foot of racetrack that you have than you would if you were right here. So make sure you're getting a good enough exit to where that first one you have a little bit of lean angle, right? So you don't really want to be too far on that curb. But this one, you don't really have lean angle. It's the same thing. When you don't have lean angle, you can use so much of the track, no matter if it's bumpy or not. So make sure you're using this. This one, for me, because I'm fully on the throttle when I'm on it, it gets a little sideways, but it never steps out. Like, it's never scary. There's some curbs, like I'm pretty sensitive to curbs, honestly. Some curbs I really don't like. Like when I come out of turn 2 and I get too far on that rumble strip, I'm like, yeah, okay, my lap's done. Yeah. But when I come through here, I know it's not gonna slide enough for me to get the bike too upset. So this is another one of those corners, right? I see a lot of people turning in way too early. You have to basically, for me, I'm waiting until I pass this bridge shadow, which no matter what time of day, it doesn't change too much. It maybe fluctuates about 5 feet, but no matter what, your closing speed into this corner doesn't change drastically, right? So when I get to about under this bridge is when I've made that final full transition into this last corner, like right about here, right before the bridge, I should say, sorry. And I'm this far open, like the only way I can get through this corner and not fully let off the throttle is if I'm this far out, opening up the corner. If I was, again, just 3 feet farther in, the edge of the track is so close. But if I'm out a little bit farther as I close into this entry, I have so much more room to know that when I apply throttle and stand the bike up, I'll have plenty of room on the edge of the track at the end. And here again, you don't want to have a spot, I didn't really talk about it, but in 3C, right, when you come over those bumps in the middle of those 2 chicanes, right, you don't want to let off the throttle because the chassis gets upset. You want to hold maintenance throttle so that the bike doesn't get unloaded. Same thing here. You want to hold maintenance throttle so when you're at full lean up against this curb, your chassis doesn't get upset and start sliding. If you're just holding a little bit of maintenance, right, when you come in and you just start to roll off, not fully off, but just close a little bit, your chassis isn't getting fully unweighted. And that's what we want to avoid.